I am very experienced in being told to be quiet. You may not know that about me, but I have been told to shut up. I've been told it's time to go, honey. I've been I've heard that soft sound of shh because I'm talking too loud. Or you're interrupting me, let me finish. Or I gotta go, I'll talk to you later, that trying to get away from me. Or my favorite, honey, I could talk all day, but I've gotta go. And that kind of like lets you remember that maybe I just was rambling on a little too much. So I'm very experienced in hearing that. But a new phrase I heard a few years ago took me back because I had never been told to stop talking before. Years ago, we had lived, well, actually back further than that, 15 years older than my youngest sister. And I got married at 18, so she was 3 years old when I left home. And then when we became adults, she was living on the East Coast while I was living on the West Coast. So we spent very little time together, and it always seemed like when we came home for a visit, it was never at the same time. We eventually moved to Australia and lived halfway around the world. When we came back to the States and got settled in, I wanted to go visit my baby sister out in Boston. So my husband and I took off. We went on a trip out there. It had been so long since we had spent time together. We talked nonstop. We went for a walk, we talked. We got up in the morning, we talked over coffee. We went to the mall and would talk up and down. We even spent all our time in the car talking, hard to believe. And then when she was at work, I was there and we were talking right there too. When we went to the mall, my husband decided to go off and do some shopping while my sister and I went to go get our toes done. And we're sitting in this salon and had no clue of anyone else being around us. We were talking nonstop. We even forgot where we were. And even wondered back after this whole event was over, were we speaking and saying things that we should not have been saying in public? So while we're there, all of a sudden, with this broken English, we hear, "Stop talking." And we look up and she smiles at us. We all kind of laugh and she goes to my sister, "You come with me, you talk later." And we started laughing and just continued to talk. But as I was saying, we totally forgot where we were, or if we'd even said anything that might have been embarrassing or shouldn't have been said in public. But it took her breaking into that conversation to get our attention. I've been told to not talk in many different ways. But have you ever had God struggle to get your attention because you're so busy talking? In 1 Kings 19, starting with verse 10, I'm going to read a little bit here. And the word of the Lord came to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been zealous for you, Lord God Almighty. I've been busy. I've been doing things for you. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put the prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left. And now they are trying to kill me. So I have worked very hard for you, and evil has destroyed everything good and is now ready to kill me." Elijah felt all alone in his world. Are you so busy doing everything you can to stay alive, to keep your world moving, that you've forgotten to listen to God? In verse 11, he goes on to say, "And the Lord said, Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. So a great and powerful wind came, but the Lord was not in it. An earthquake, but the Lord was not in that as well. And even a fire that came, but the Lord God was not in that either. Finally, the Lord came in a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" We are often so caught up in the noise of our own self sometimes. Is God with his still, small, gentle voice asking you to stop talking and listen? Down in verse 14, he replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty." So he already said that, and now he comes back to it again. So once we get God's attention, we still don't stop talking, but at least God was there listening. He says, "I have torn down all the altars, they have torn down the altars, and they put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me." There we go again. At least, like I said, he was listening to God. So down in verse, still with 1 Kings 19, but in verse 15, the Lord said to him, now this is what he tells him to go do. He has two kings that he wants him to anoint, Hazael and Jehu. And then he wants him to anoint his successor, which is Elisha. He says, "I have reserved," and he also lets him know, "I want you to get these people that are there ready for you to put into play to help serve. But I want you to know that I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees who have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him." As a parent, a wife, a friend, a co-worker, as a daughter of Christ, I always feel like I have to be in control of everything. As I've gotten older, though, I've realized God has called me to appoint others that will go out and fight as well. It's not my place to be alone doing it all. It is my responsibility to stop talking, open my eyes, and start seeing what he has prepared around me. Sometimes we could make a list of people that come to mind that are in our world that are already working, or those around that I'm mentoring. Who am I spending time with? When we all get together, we have power in numbers, and we can lay hands on those all working to direct their efforts, who are already working to direct those efforts. Those people may be the very ones called to more than we can ever do by ourselves. Those people will do more for God and the future of the gospel than we ever imagined. In verses 19 through 21, he says, "So Elijah went from there and found Elisha and dropped his cloak down around him. Elisha went to say goodbye to his family. He burned the plowing equipment that he was standing there using and working in the field. He slaughtered the oxen and went and fed all the people. And then he set out and followed Elijah, and became his servant." Maybe you have been called. Maybe the cloak has dropped on your shoulders. Get up. Stop talking about the needs and the things that you would want help with, but see the needs around you and what's being done and take action. As you read through this, what things come as you read through this text, what things come to your mind? Listen to God. look around, take notice of what God is calling you to do. Stop talking and listen.